Welcome to Idea to Investment, the podcast where we dig into the exciting world of entrepreneurship and investment. We tell the stories of tech creators doing innovative work and the investors who back them up. Along the way, unveiling the fascinating journey of an idea to scoring crucial investment, we'll highlight the voices of entrepreneurs, showcasing their grit and creativity while gaining insight from the investors who lead to those dreams. Get ready to be inspired, stay informed, and stay tuned as we explore the awesome collision of ideas and investments. Idea to Investment is sponsored by TD Ferrera Wealth Advisory Group.
Hi, I'm Nadia. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Marlow, and it is our mission to transform periods from something that is often painful to something that is pain-free. And we're starting with the very first lubricated tampon. It really stemmed from a personal problem because growing up, I was a swimmer and I always needed tampons to compete in my sport. And I got so frustrated because it felt like often I had to pause on life if I didn't have products that worked for me. I thought that maybe I was the only one, but as I started to dive deeper into this space, I learned that actually 81% of women have trouble using tampons, according to a study from Mintel Market Research. And so it really became this huge problem that we were all passionate about solving. We went on to create the very first lubricated tampon. We had to go through Health Canada and FDA approvals and spend over a year developing this product. We then expanded to not only launch on our website, but on Amazon and into different retail partners. And it's grown to be this overall mission around transforming periods and reducing the stigma. We have a platform called the TMI Club where we break down topics that are typically considered TMI around periods and reproductive health, and just really building a community around the whole brand as well.
And I'm Chris Guillon. I'm one of the co-founders of StormFisher Hydrogen. We're a renewable energy project developer that produces low carbon fuels to be used by industries, municipalities, utilities to help them lower their emissions. And in addition to that, I'm an Ivy grad from the MBA class of 2006 and participate in Ivy's Entrepreneurship Institute as an entrepreneur in residence, supporting their entrepreneurship courses and classes and coaching business teams.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Of course, we have great affection for the Morissette Institute for Entrepreneurship at Western and the business school at Ivy, and do all sorts of collaborations in this town to ensure that founders who are connected to both, and I know you've got roots as well, Nadia, to Western, to Ivy, to make sure that founders have all the resources that they need to support them in their pathway and their journey and launching and growing businesses and bringing world-class opportunities to the world. And certainly Marlow is one of those. So I love that you've brought that connection in, Chris, on the ways that you're connected to this community in addition to StormFisher. So we often talk about having the 60-second pitch, and Nadia, you've sort of just delivered yours, and I love that. And it's a story I can never grow tired of. And so thank you for that. Chris, I'm sure you've heard then the pitch from Marlow multiple times. And so talk to us about what your first impression was after hearing the pitch the first time or the second time. And then from there, how did you actually know that Marlow was going to be a good fit for your investment portfolio?
So, after hearing the first pitch, one thing that really resonated with me was the passion the team had for the problem they were trying to solve. Been involved in entrepreneurship for, pushing 2-3 decades now. And one of the things that I find that stands out with successful, companies and products is a team that's committed to the cause and has a passion for the issue. And very much felt that with Marlow. And then in addition to that, the challenge they were trying to address felt like a very underrepresented problem, and that the market wasn't really paying attention to it. And so from a call it an economic or market opportunity perspective, I thought there was a real opportunity that Marlow could pursue and be very successful, and it's turned out that way.
And Nadia, thinking, also on first impressions, what was your first impression of Chris as an investor, and what made you seek? This is the podcast that we get real about that connection back and forth. So on first impressions as Chris as an investor, and then what made you actually want to seek investment with Chris?
Yeah, so we actually connected with Chris in our last year of university because Marlow started out of the New Venture Project, and we were paired with him as our entrepreneur in residence. And I remember our professor said, you'll probably connect with your EIR like once or twice in the semester, like maybe, a couple times. But we got so lucky because Chris connected with us weekly, and he was really pushing us to think about entrepreneurship. And we had always been interested in it, but it wasn't something we were going to necessarily pursue full time. We had all kind of like landed consulting jobs or finance jobs. But at the end of the course, there was like a pitch, and Chris was really helping us practice and grilling us with different questions. And he was just so supportive the whole time. And he was the one who actually said, I think you have a really good idea here and you should go out and pursue this full time. And it happened to be the summer of COVID where we didn't have anything else to do. So we took his advice, and he kept meeting with us even after the course was done and supporting us, opening up his network to so many different people that he's known through the entrepreneurship space, helping us prepare to like raise a bigger funding round, start to think about how do we get inventory, manufacturers, and just being with us the whole way. And I feel like even to this date, we meet at least monthly or more. And he's always been so supportive and just helping us workshop challenges and just being open. And he always is encouraging of us. So I think that definitely stood out to us, is having someone who can be that mentor and that encouraging voice of confidence as we're going through the journey as well.
I love it. The depth of sort of the side-by-side-ness of the journey. And as you said, Chris, there's something really attractive about founders who are extremely passionate and have deep subject matter expertise on the product that they're building and their company that they're building. And so the stories that you have both told, it seems like it was a fairly perfect match from the very beginning of an awful lot of give first mentality from your perspective, Chris, and seeing the potential of Nadia and the co-founders for Marlow, and just spending that time side by side for each new obstacle, talking about the obstacle, figuring out how to remove that obstacle or reduce the obstacle so the speed to success in this disruptive technology could actually get to market really quickly. Thank you for sharing. That's a really neat story about how it is that you were connected and how you stayed connected and how you continued to form that relationship through to investment. So, you know, Chris, you mentioned a couple. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I think that's I'll say a common trait of Western and the Ivy community.
Yes.
When we were forming StormFisher, we got substantial support from Ivy, either classmates of mine who opened doors, made introductions, through the staff and administration, as well. And so it's, I'm just continuing on the tradition that Ivy has built to supporting its alumni and the community.
I love to see that. It makes me wonder, was StormFisher actually involved in quantum?
Can you say that again? No, we were. I'm dating myself now. We were before Quantum's time.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I mean, maybe in the future we'll see Marlow in Quantum or Quantum Shift. I think it is actually.
Yes.
Eric would be disappointed if I didn't say that brand as it is.
Very impressive program.
Yes, incredible. So certainly something to touch base on. So thinking, Chris, you had mentioned sort of in the early part of your introduction that you've had some decades of building companies, and so you've got an incredibly successful company as a co-founder for StormFisher, and now being an investor. What would you say is some of among the biggest myths that you experienced when you were seeking investment for StormFisher, and now on the other side of the table, when you think of sort of myths that perpetuate within the investment or raising capital side of the business that still continues to be a pervasive myth that really isn't something that we ought to talk about or have as a narrative? And what are the ways that you support founders in sort of breaking down those myths and getting to have their focus on raising in today's environment?
Yeah, very meaty question. So I don't know if I'd call it a myth, but one of the issues or challenges that we face at StormFisher is our footprint was not just Canada, but North America wide and potentially globally. And one of the myths or challenges in the Canadian landscape is a very sometimes a narrow focus on markets, looking just within Canada. And one of the things I liked about Marlow is it's a world, the need is worldwide, and looking at it that way rather than just the London market or the GTA or Canada. And then that also goes to both the market, but also the investment community. Sure, there are great investors locally, but there are ones that are outside of your local call it niche, that can help open doors and provide a broader support to organizations as they grow.
I agree. I mean, I think so often founders think it's sort of the fenced area, or investment thinks of, this is where I operate my business or live, and therefore I should be investing in companies that are in this region. Of course, that's awesome. But being able to invest in areas that are niche or exciting for the investor, and wherever that investment can go, certainly if it can build a Canadian company, that's awesome. But we know that that it really shouldn't be restricted by the boundary or the geography, and it really should be about what makes sense for the portfolio. For you, Nadia, the same thing. You've talked with a lot of founders, you're mentoring founders, and of course with your own founder experience, what have you found now to be a bit of a big myth about pitching to investors or raising capital that you kind of wish you had known was more of a myth than an actual reality?
I think one thing that comes to mind is how long it takes to fundraise, because I think when you go on, like, you see things on TV or in movies, it's like the deal gets made right away and you just think, oh, that's how fundraising is supposed to happen. But in reality, it takes like 100, even 200 meetings to raise your round. It takes 6 months to over a year sometimes to close it. And you're constantly meeting with people, you're going through due diligence. And a lot of it is relationship building. Like if you meet someone for the first time, they're not going to necessarily invest. But if you build that relationship over time, you send them monthly progress updates, you get on calls with them. And one investor told me that they like to see a trend. Like they don't like to invest in dots, but they like to invest in a line. And so I think if you show them like, this is what we're going to do. And then a few months later, we actually did it. And this was the accomplishment, or this is what we learned from doing it. Now, suddenly they can see that you're sticking to your word. You're doing what you're setting out to do. You're meeting those KPIs. So I would say how much of the fundraising process is just relationship driven and actually building those relationships, and how long it can take. It's not just going to be an overnight thing, but you have to be prepared to take a lot of meetings, to travel and meet people in person. Like meeting people face to face is always so beneficial. So we planned like different road shows in like New York and LA and Boston, and like going to all these key hubs to connect with people face to face and build on those relationships even more.
I was actually going to acknowledge you've got a lot of different investors on your cap table, and I wanted to ask you to share some of your top insights and learn what you've learned about managing different investor relationships. What I love is you've just actually shared how are you actually getting into other markets, ensuring that you have access to and relationship development opportunities with other investors. When you do that, where have you found sort of speed to success in with those investors who have had that first meeting with you, who are receiving the materials of here's where we are, here's where we're going, and this is what we've done? What do you find is sort of the next step in strengthening that relationship and actually closing on a deal?
I think the monthly updates are so key, like highlighting here are like our key goals, here are key priorities, and here's the progress on all of them. And then in a couple months, okay, this is the result of what happened, and getting on a call once a quarter just to share what some of those updates are. We have a whole CRM where we track like these are all the investors we've connected with, and here's what they said they were looking for. I feel like that really helps to make like those personal notes about what you talked about with an investor so that you can remember it for the next conversation. I think also doing accelerator programs really helps. Like we did a US-based accelerator, and it helped connect with one of the investors' dream ventures for this round. And they like saw us go through the whole accelerator program. They saw us pitch at the end, and then they were so much more open to opening up their network and connecting us with other folks. Like Annie said, she wanted to be like the wing woman for us when it came to fundraising. So I think just having like either going through programs or pitch competitions where people can see you a couple times rather than just like a one-off call that maybe they don't get to know you, but actually completing a whole program and getting to know them over the course of that program.
And often people will talk about how raising your round can't necessarily be your full-time job, because you still need to be building your product. You still need to be focused on sales. You still need to have that market traction. But it sounds to me like you found the balance of really prioritizing the relationship management and new relationship, and having sort of that circular or that flywheel to ensure that investors who showed some interest or maybe didn't show interest, if you're making 100 calls or 200 visits and you're getting a lot of no's, at some point you're going to get the yes, because you're doing the things that you've talked about with some focus, with some confidence, and with some habits that are helpful to show how you're going to run your business, or how you're running your business to actually grow it. Chris, sort of on the same vein, what are some of the things that you deeply appreciate when you're working with companies and founders that you've invested in, and any tips that you can share for founders, whether they're a first-time founder, a serial founder who is starting again, either with successes or failures? What are the kinds of tips that you have for founders that can help them to make their investment journey smoother?
Yeah, a couple, and just building off of Nadia's comment,
Yeah.
it's a marathon. It's not a race.
Yeah.
I remember when we were chatting with Nadia when they were looking to do, their first formal raise, and we're looking at the timelines. I'm like, ooh, we're gonna need to double or triple that. It just takes longer. The process of bringing on an investor and nurturing that relationship,
Yeah.
it takes time. And then, the other thing with entrepreneurship that I found, it's hard. You see a lot of the razzle dazzle of successful founders, going on the stock market, an IPO or an exit. That's great, but it's a long and torturous road to get there. And
If it's
so
easy, everybody would be doing it.
yeah, exactly. And it's challenging, and sometimes it's lonely. And so, having people to talk to, whether it be your colleagues or other co-founders or mentors, to give you that motivation to proceed. Because, as you said, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And there's a reason not everyone's doing it, because it's hard. And also, not only, your immediate network, but also, the I'll call it the political or broader network of stakeholders. What incentives are out there to support entrepreneurship, and encourage new innovation and new entrepreneurs to take that path to growth and innovation and support the Canadian economy. It's challenging. A lot of times they look at successful entrepreneurs as a source of additional tax revenue, but the source of additional jobs and growth is the other way of looking at it.
So what I really liked about both of your responses is the concept of, being connected, nurturing the relationship, ensuring that the loneliness doesn't set in as sometimes it can. It sounds like from the early days, the both of you were well connected and had a source of dialogue that was helpful in growing Marlow and getting it going, and then being prepared for raising capital. So outside of the relationship, because we know that that's one aspect of the investment deal, Chris, how do you manage risks in the portfolio that come with investing, just in general?
Yeah, risk and risk mitigation is typically a blind spot for entrepreneurs and founders, because they're hardwired for, like, the eye on the prize and success. And if all you did was look at the risks, then you wouldn't do anything. It'd be easier just to not do it. But trying to find that right balance of understanding and at least being aware of the risks that your company faces. So, for example, with Marlow in the early days, regulatory approval was a risk, and so working with the team and sharing some insights we've had going through, regulatory processes at StormFisher to help understand and try to develop plans for risk mitigation. It's a hard part for founders and startups, but one that's very crucial. And with another shout out to Ivy, Guy Holborn, and I wrote a case a few years back on looking at risk mitigation and risk factors for in the energy sector for energy projects, and I've taught that case several times at Ivy, and very, it's a topic that I think founders and entrepreneurs need to think more about.
Yeah, I totally agree. When you think of sort of trends now in investing and where the trends are going, what are some of the things that are really exciting for you as it relates to investment and as it relates to where you see risk, but where that risk actually has the kind of outcome and the kind of benefit that you would be seeking as an investor?
So, and Nadia can comment on this more, the rapidly changing marketplace is something that I, as I'll say, a later stage founder, struggle to keep up with. Things are just changing so fast. And so I'm sure Nadia can comment on, like, just like when they give me update calls, I'm like, oh my God, I just can't keep up. And from a risk factor, whether it be social media or other aspects that the Marlow team has to manage. It goes pluses and minuses, and Natty, maybe worthwhile talking about the recent news this summer on health impacts of menstrual products, and how that was a risk but then an opportunity.
Yeah, so I think overall women's health is definitely booming, like the rise of femtech, the investment in the space. And what Chris was mentioning was earlier this summer, an article came out from UC Berkeley and a study that they had done where they found traces of metals and other toxins in tampons. And they didn't disclose which brands they found it in, but it kind of caused this huge surge in customers and consumers looking deeper into their products. And it's that we definitely prioritize. Like, we third-party test all of our products. It's all sustainable, all toxin-free. And so we were able to kind of capitalize on some of that demand and that consumer surge for more better for you products. And people are looking at the food that they're eating, skincare, hair care, but it was the first time they started to look at menstrual care. And so it represented this huge opportunity and this huge shift in consumer demand. And then how could we then capitalize on socials, on our Amazon, like making sure that we show ourselves as a thought leader in this space. So that was definitely an exciting trend that happened, but this overall boom around women's health and people looking into their reproductive health as well.
I love that. Like when you were talking about capitalizing, when you built TMI community, and when you think of your consumers and how they're following the content that you're producing as deep thought leaders in the space, and how you could very quickly respond to a market condition that had changed based on consumer knowledge, and talk about the solution of Marlow being exactly what they're looking for. I think when I reflect on the way that you've built your company and how you've sort of concurrently built the community and having dialogue, that lends itself so easily to the thought leadership and the deep interest you have on for menstruators in understanding the content they're consuming, the products they're purchasing, and how your innovation is actually a successful opportunity for them to have a change in their consumer behavior, for them to be thinking about their health and well-being, and to be able to get both content, information, and product from a source that they've developed deep trust with. I think is quite a sweet spot that you've developed. And so I love that you raised that. It makes me actually wonder, it's sort of a bit of your secret sauce, and taking sort of the concept of the secret sauce and flipping that even to the investment portfolio. What would you say is kind of the perfect secret sauce for the mix between equity and debt in growing your company?
Yeah, I would say that early on, we knew that we had to go through regulatory approval. We had to do like R&D. We were fresh out of school with not much of our own capital to necessarily put into the business. And so we knew that with all of those expensive costs, we were going to have to raise pretty early on. And so we raised a pre-seed round, and definitely Ivy was a huge part of that. Having connections to different alumni, to Chris, who was supportive of us. So that's really helped. And then now, as we've grown, we've also started to take on some debt financing, more specifically for inventory, because we know that that's more of just a delay of cash. And once we actually sell through that inventory, we'll have the money to pay back the loans. So now there's on debt financing for more specific costs. But when it comes to more growth things like new product development, expanding into retail, expanding our marketing strategy, we think that that lends itself better to equity. And so that's kind of been our sweet spot, but also taking advantage of a lot of the non-dilutive funding. Like, we've won a lot of pitch competitions, almost $700,000 now from pitch competitions and grants, tapping into like IRAP. Elevate IP is an amazing program for people who need to do IP services. Can Export, we just tapped into this year. So also taking advantage of some of those non-dilutive funding and government programs that exist out there to support founders too.
When you think of sort of, maybe a question for you, Chris, you noted sort of the passion that Nadia has and had when you first met her and the co-founders. That passion obviously is still alive. I mean, I see you on broadcasts, and you're earning media, and you're demonstrating thought leadership. Chris, when you think about sort of the passion of the early founder and now a more mature founder who's running a huge business, where do you think some of those differences are, and how has that passion been redirected?
Yeah, the analogy I used, it's a marathon, not a sprint, is appropriate here. It's keeping that passion as the organization grows, and I'll say as the as Marlow grows and matures, it's, you know, making sure that passion continues, sharing it not just with your market, but as Nadia and the team grow, sharing it with your team and your staff and your other stakeholders, whether they be suppliers or whatnot, to you know, instill that confidence and that long-term growth opportunity. That's you know, the early days is keeping yourself motivated, but as your organization grows, making sure that motivation, that passion spreads throughout your organization and your stakeholder base.
And Nadia, for you, how is it that you remind yourself of that passion, and how do you actually keep sort of that excitement and that vibration and that energy when you think of suppliers, when you think of consumers, customers, when you think of next round of investment? How are the ways that you keep yourself in that space?
Yeah, I think because it's such a personal mission, it helps keep that motivation and that passion alive. And I remember early on, we had a marketing advisor who said that this is not just a lubricated tampon brand. Like, you need to come up with an overall mission around the brand. And she gave the example of Nike. Like, they're not just selling running shoes and athletic wear, like they're selling an overall mission around sports and the art of the possible and dreaming big. And so they said, what is that version for Marlow? And that's kind of where we started to come up with the idea of the TMI Club, and knowing that growing up, you don't get enough information in health classes. You're trying to go down Google and Reddit rabbit holes of figuring out things about your body. And so we knew that not only were we passionate about the product, but this overall vision of transforming women's health and making it a go-to resource. And I think that passion and seeing the reviews from our customers, like we have a Slack called Marlow Love, where we share customer reviews or nice messages we get from community members, and just hearing from like moms who bought the product for their daughter and they're like, they were never able to use tampons before, but now they are and they're comfortable. Or I had vaginal dryness leading up to menopause, but now I can comfortably insert tampons. So I think just keeping that Marlow Slack channel alive and sharing those customer reviews and seeing the impact firsthand that you're making with people, that just helps keep us motivated, and knowing about the overall vision we're working towards. It's not just a single product, but completely transform itself.
So with that, what's on the horizon for you?
There's a lot of things we're working towards. We just closed some more investment, which is super exciting. And so we're working on continuing to grow Amazon. That's definitely the biggest channel for us. Majority of our sales are coming from there. So investing into different ad strategies, paid search, just being able to grow on that channel, and maybe even hiring some team members that can support us in that area. Working on some future product development, which we can't disclose too much, but we're super excited about that as well. And just overall growing the team and working towards making Marlow, and then especially expanding in the US. We brought on some US investors, and I know this is something Chris has been pushing us a lot towards as well, is how can we do some more US marketing and grow the presence in the US market as well.
That's awesome. Wow, it sounds like a very bright future as far as the horizon looks for you. A lot on the go, big things on the go. For you, Chris, when you think from the investor perspective with Marlow or other companies that you're supporting, what's on the horizon for you?
You know, I think on the horizon for me is you know, continuing to support and nurture entrepreneurship in Canada. You know, we got you know, I feel the best and the brightest out there, and you know, looking at entrepreneurship as call it a career path for students, but also for those that are, you know, later in their career that want to get into entrepreneurship, but also, you know, the broader stakeholder network of angel investors and you know, supporting the, you know, the whole ecosystem. And Ivy's done an amazing job to build up that ecosystem through the Entrepreneurship Institute.
I totally agree. And I think some of the story that I know about you, Nadia, is going, having your undergrad from Ivy and considering the path of entrepreneurship, graduating, getting into a JOB, and making the decision to step away from that and actually go full on with Marlow. That's the kind of story that I think is such an incredible story, one that's told often, but when you see that story told and the person making the choice and having the community to make it happen and having the right people around you to feel safe in what that could look like, and designing a future that's different, and having the impact that you have with the mission that you have, is absolutely incredible. And so I love having conversations with you at different stages of your journey, from the early days to where you are now. And I can't wait for the next conversation where we're beyond the current horizon and it actually turns into something that is quite a bit bigger for the company. And so I can't wait to have that conversation again with you in the future. One of the things that we love to do is on this podcast, no matter the age of the founder, where they are on their journey, and whether they're first or second time or third time or more founder, we love to always ask the founder if they had a chance to go back in time and speak with their younger self. What are the kinds of things that you might say to yourself that you know now would have been great advice then?
Mhm. I think we kind of touched on it a bit earlier, and I always love to share it in talks that I do with university students, which is success doesn't happen overnight.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times people, like Chris said, see the founders winning pitch competitions and awards and going on TV shows, but they don't see all the hard work that goes behind the scenes because social media is so over glamorized. And I love to tell the story of different celebrities that have gone through this. So for example, Oprah, many people don't realize that she was fired from a TV co-anchor position at the age of 23, and she was told that she's unfit for television news. And now we know what happened with Oprah. And there's so many stories like that. Even the famous actress from This Is Us, she only had 80 cents in her bank account when she auditioned for This Is Us because she had failed audition after audition. And so I think just reminding ourselves that success doesn't happen overnight. I went into Ivy not really knowing what I wanted to do, and I came out doing something completely different. And if you keep working at it and you keep, trying to pivot according to all the different feedback you get from customers and from different marketing conditions that come your way, then eventually you will get to that success moment. And of course, there's so much more we want to do with Marlow, but just reminding ourselves of that every time we face a challenge or hurdle.
And acknowledging the success you've had and celebrating that success. That's awesome. I want to thank both of you for your time today, having the story between a founder and an investor and the ways that they came together, the work that they've done together, building a company, being a cheerleader, being a sort of a connector, giving the advice at the right time in the growth of the company, and making the decisions at the right time for the growth of the company. I think we covered a lot today, and I really appreciate the time that we've spent together. And for us at Tech Alliance, Idea to Investment is sponsored by TD Ferrera Wealth Advisory Group, and it's brought to you by Tech Alliance of Southwestern Ontario. And of course, if you'd like to know more about Tech Alliance and resources available to entrepreneurs and startups, go ahead and visit techalliance.ca. My name is Christina Fox, and I thank you so much for joining us today.